There is a version of you that you have never been introduced to. Not the version you show your family, not the version you show your colleagues or your friends, not even the version you show yourself in the quiet moments before you fall asleep. There is a version underneath all of those, older than any of them, darker than most of them, and more powerful than all of them combined. It has been making decisions on your behalf since before you had the language to know it existed. Jung called it the shadow. And before we are finished here tonight, you are going to recognize it, not as something foreign, as something familiar, something you have been carefully, quietly avoiding your entire life. The shadow is not your evil side. That is the most common misunderstanding, and it leads people to dismiss what Jung was actually saying. The shadow is not the part of you that wants to do harm. The shadow is the part of you that your conscious self decided was unacceptable and exiled. Maybe it was your anger. As a child, anger got you punished or frightened someone you loved. So you learned to swallow it, to perform calm while something underneath went on burning. That burning didn't disappear. It went underground. It became the shadow. Maybe it was your neediness. You learned early that needing things was a burden on the people around you. So you became self-sufficient, independent, the one who never asks for help. The need didn't leave. It went underground. It became the shadow. Maybe it was your ambition. You grew up somewhere that punished people for wanting more. Standing out was dangerous. Desire was shameful. So you dimmed it. You pretended not to want the things you wanted. The wanting didn't leave. It went underground. It became the shadow. Whatever it is, the pattern is always the same. The conscious mind decides something about you is too dangerous to keep in the light, and rather than destroying it, which it cannot do, it pushes it down into the part of the psyche that Jung called the unconscious. That is where the shadow lives, and that is where it begins to act. The shadow does not announce itself. It does not knock. It finds gaps, moments where your conscious control loosens, and it moves through them. It is the rage that comes out sideways, the cutting remark that surprises even you, the cruelty that arrives in a tone of voice you didn't plan. You weren't trying to be cruel. The shadow was. It is the attraction you can't explain, the person who is completely wrong for you and whom you cannot stop thinking about. The shadow recognizes something in them that you have exiled in yourself. It is trying to recover what was lost. It is the deep envy you feel for someone else's success that you will not admit is envy, that you call instead fairness or concern, or a reasonable critique of their character. The envy belongs to a desire in you that the shadow is carrying because you won't. None of this is a character flaw. All of it is the consequence of an exile that was, at the time, the only available solution. The shadow's most destructive tool is projection, and it is the hardest one to see because it looks, from the inside, exactly like clear perception. The person you dislike most intensely, the one whose behavior irritates you beyond proportion, the one you find yourself returning to in your thoughts, the one whose faults you can list without effort. That person is very likely carrying a piece of your shadow. This is not always true. Some people are simply difficult. But when the reaction is disproportionate, when the irritation is out of scale with what actually happened, that gap between the event and your response is where the shadow is working. You are not seeing the other person clearly. You are seeing your own exiled material in them and reacting to it there because you cannot react to it in yourself. Jung was precise about this. We do not see others as they are. We see them as we are, filtered through the material we carry and refuse to acknowledge. The more violently we react to something in another person, the more reliably we can trace that reaction back to something unacknowledged in ourselves. This is uncomfortable to hear. It is meant to be. The place the shadow causes the most damage is in relationships, because relationships are the closest mirrors we have, and the shadow does not like mirrors. You will consistently attract people who embody the qualities you have exiled in yourself. This is not coincidence. It is not bad luck. The psyche is drawn magnetically to what it has repressed, because on some level, it knows that the way back to wholeness runs through these encounters. The partner who is emotionally unavailable is often chosen by the part of you that exiled its own emotional needs. The shadow is trying to recover those needs by placing them in the relationship rather than in the self, where they would require direct acknowledgement. The partner who explodes in anger is often chosen by the part of you that exiled its own anger long ago. You are drawn to someone who can feel openly what you have forbidden yourself to feel. The partner who is recklessly free is often chosen by the part of you that exiled its own wildness under a layer of responsibility. You watch them do what the shadow is holding for you. This is why the qualities that attract us most intensely and the qualities that irritate us most intensely in a partner are often, at their root, the same quality. We are circling what we have lost. Jung was not interested in destroying the shadow. He considered that both impossible and deeply misguided. What he proposed instead was integration, the process he called individuation, the work of becoming whole by recovering what has been exiled rather than deepening the exile. This begins with the hardest instruction I will give you tonight. Look at what irritates you most in other people and ask without flinching whether any of it belongs to you. Not all of it, but any of it. Look at what you judge most harshly in others: the laziness, the neediness, the arrogance, the avoidance, the hunger for attention, and sit for a moment with the possibility that your intensity around that quality is a signal, not a verdict. Look at the recurring patterns in your life, the relationships that end the same way, the conflicts that have the same shape, the situations that seem to find you no matter where you go, and consider that the common element in all of them is you, carrying something you have not yet looked at directly. The shadow does not want to destroy you. The shadow wants to be seen. Every piece of behavior that puzzles you about yourself, the cruelty that surprises you, the envy you deny, the attraction you can't explain, the fear without an object, is the shadow announcing itself, asking whether you are ready yet to have the conversation. The cost of refusing this conversation is significant and specific. Jung observed that the shadow does not become smaller when you refuse to look at it. It becomes larger. The longer the exile continues, the more energy the psyche must spend maintaining it. energy that is no longer available for living. This is the source of a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you have done. The weariness that comes not from overwork, but from the sustained effort of not feeling something, not knowing something, not being something you are. And eventually, in Jung's framework, and in the experience of most people who live long enough to observe themselves honestly, the shadow forces the conversation through a breakdown or a crisis, or a relationship that finally makes the pattern undeniable. It will not wait forever. It is patient, but it is not inexhaustible. The question is not whether you will meet your shadow. The question is whether you will choose the meeting or wait until the shadow chooses it for you. Here is what I want you to leave with tonight. The shadow is not evidence that you are broken. It is evidence that you were adaptive, that some version of you, at some point in your life, made a reasonable decision that certain parts of your nature were safer hidden than visible. That decision made sense then. It may not make sense now. And the work of individuation, the work Jung spent his entire life pointing toward, is not the work of becoming a different person. It is the work of becoming the whole person you already are, by recovering what you sent underground when you did not yet have the strength to carry it openly. Your anger is not a flaw. It is a signal that something matters to you. Your neediness is not a weakness. It is evidence that you are capable of connection. Your ambition is not vanity. It is the sound of a life that wants to be larger than the one you have allowed yourself to live. None of what you buried was without value. It was buried because it was powerful, because some part of the world around you, at some point, could not hold it. You can hold it now. That is what growing up actually means. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is the most loyal part of you, the part that held everything you couldn't carry, and waited, without complaint, for the day you were finally ready to take it back. That day does not have to be dramatic. It does not require a crisis or a collapse, or a long retreat into the mountains. It requires only a moment of honest looking at the reaction that surprised you, at the pattern you keep finding yourself in, at the quality in another person that bothers you more than it should. You are not afraid of the shadow. You are afraid of how much it knows about you. But it is not a stranger. It is the part of you that has been standing in the dark, holding what you couldn't carry in the light, waiting, patiently, without judgment, for you to finally turn around. The shadow is not asking you to become someone else. It is asking you to stop pretending to be less than you are.